Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. This is your host Sri Iyer. Today it is coming live on both Gunner Shot as well as on P Guru's. This is our trio of generals, the Gunner site. Let's welcome Generals Ravi Shankar, General Raj Shukla, and General Harimohan Iyer. Namaskaram, sir. How are you?
Namaskaram.
Today, it's a different topic. What defines Indian Army leadership? And there's one gentleman who's believed to have sort of set the rules on how things should be. And I'm also hearing a couple of days now on social media that India has reached about 90% self-sufficiency in most of its needs, especially for the army. I don't know how true that is, but it's all good news. Over to you, General Raj Shukla. You're going to start the ball rolling today, and then we'll have General Harimohan Iyer, and then we'll have General Shankar. Over to you, sir.
So this topic has been set up very instinctively. When I think in the morning the WhatsApp messages were being exchanged, I just thought that we discuss geopolitics the year around. And if we see events in Bangladesh, we are going to discuss Bangladesh over the next 2-3 months. This shared. So let's turn to another subject, military ethos and leadership. And there are a couple of reasons behind it. You know, I think 2 years back, Thomas Ricks wrote a book on generalship in the United States of America, where his argument was that much of American politics has been set up by gold standards of military leadership. And all of a sudden, you find American military leadership crumbling like a cookie before Trump. I mean, it's just vanished. And in that context, I have been just reading a little bit about ethos, military leadership. Not that the subject is new, but just revisiting that. And it just struck me that we may like to discuss this today because it is hugely important. So let me begin with ethos. You know, on the 18th of November, that date has just gone by. In fact, in India, there was this movie made, 120 Bahadur. It was on Razangla. And that is such a fascinating story which symbolizes the Indian Army ethos. And I'll begin with that. In the November of 1962, when we are in the midst of this national security disaster and Indian national security posture gets undone, you have the Indian military retreating from all over. In fact, formal orders have been given to retreat. In the midst of this acute crisis, there is a Charlie Company 13 Kumaon, 120 Ahir boys from Haryana, who are tasked with defending the Razangla Pass. They get together. Their company commander is a person called now immortal Major Shaitan Singh. But the lesser known character is the JCO, senior JCO called Naib Subedar Hari Ram. Now, these people get together and they kind of democratically discuss as to what they should do. When the Indian Army is withdrawing, what should this Charlie Company tasked with the defense of Razangla do? And what needs to be noted is that the brigade commander's formal orders to the battalion commander were, he had said, I know the position of Charlie Company is not very strong. They are not very well resourced. Their firepower is weak, so give some kind of semblance of a fight and then withdraw. So the formal orders were for an organized retreat. And yet these people get together और वो आपस में बात करते हैं and they recall 1857 and say कि अहीरों ने नरनौल में क्या लड़ाई लड़ी थी और हमने अंग्रेजों को शिकस्त दी थी. And they say कि अब हम नरनौल की लड़ाई दोबारा लड़ेंगे. This is their democratic decision. Shaitan Singh in fact tells Hari Ram कि आप बताओ पीछे हटना है कि नहीं. Once he gets those orders from the battalion brigade commander. And these people decide themselves. And another line from their discussion is, now they are simple folk, village folk. They say ये भारत माँ की धरती है, इसकी 1 inch हम नहीं छोड़ेंगे. So the formal orders are to withdraw, rules and regulations, tactical assessment say कि आप पीछे आ जाओ. but the ethos says Bharat maa ki dharti hai, ek inch nahi chhodenge. And now Hari Ram tells his men, now that you have made this decision, it's a democratic decision, it's not an order. How do we ensure that all of us comply with it? And he tells the men that now that all of us have decided, अगर आपने पीठ पीछे की तो मैं आपको गोलियों से भून दूंगा दुश्मन से पहले, और अगर मैंने पीठ पीछे की आप मुझे गोलियों से भून दो. And then they go and tell, or Hari Ram goes and tells Shaitan Singh कि साहब हम पीछे नहीं हटेंगे. And Shaitan Singh, Major Shaitan Singh tells him कि चैंपियन कंपनी से मुझे यही उम्मीद थी. And those of us in the military will understand this cliche, or this the importance, sorry, not cliche, the importance of this champion company, that we will live up to what we have sworn to do. And in an amazing episode, 120 out of 120 men, 110 die. And when the patrol reaches Rizangla in the February of 1963, they find most of these men, including Major Shaitan Singh, with a rifle in their hands, bullets in their chest, but trapped in snow there, but died last man, last round. I'm told they killed 1,300 Chinese. The Chinese are quite shaken up, and I don't know, because of this reason or for some other reason, they declare a ceasefire a day later. But the Chinese get the message, Chushul airfield is saved and Ladakh is saved. Now look at this, it's an extraordinary tale, because the ethos of this Charlie Company 13 Kumaon, and you can extrapolate it to many situations of valor, is far higher than the rules and regulations frame, far higher than the constitutional frame. In fact, it's godly. In another such instance, Naib Subedar Chunni Lal, who's a winner of the Ashok Chakra, the Veer Chakra, Sena Medal Gallantry, I think the highest decorated Indian soldier, is told by General Sami Khan, his corps commander in Ladakh, after the Bana operation, कि आपने जो कर दिखाया है ये देवताओं समान है, देवताओं समान है. So this godliness which comes from the ethos and its sheer superiority over rules, regulations, is something that is really moving, and it is extremely elevating, inspiring, what have you. And my inference is that as long as the Indian Army's ethos remains strong, it remains higher than rules, regulations, the Indian Army will be a ticking war machine. And if that is the ethos, and if that is the ethos, look at our leadership legacy. We'll get into that a little later. The kind of benchmark set by people like Sam Manekshaw, Sagat Singh, and Prem Bhagat, as we may say, Sam, Sagat, Bhagat, they are extraordinary, and we can discuss that too. So this was the reason why I said, let's discuss this and bring this extraordinary ethos, this leadership, because it is, while I'm a big proponent of technology, nothing will be of any use unless you have military leadership. And leadership, not only military, but especially in the military. And if there is a gold standard, a bar to be set, a kind of cesspool of talent, you find it in India's extraordinary military legacy. The current crop of leaders, in fact, my generation downwards, all we have to do is to live up to the legacy and live up to this ethos. If we live up to this legacy and ethos, India's defense frame will be strong, our nation will be strong, and India will really benefit by leaps and bounds. So I wanted to set the stage by talking of this ethos. And I'll invite General Shankar and General Hari here to take off.
What a story, sir. Thank you so much. General Harimohan Iyer, your thoughts on this topic, sir? You're muted, sir. You're muted.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'll take it forward from where General Shukla has left. Now, I'll start with an incident which happened with me. I was in the United Nations force in Congo, and office staff was Pakistani. I had a Naib Subedar from Pakistan, Subedar, and another guy who was manning my comms, a guy called Haldar Khatak. Now, these two gentlemen stayed with me for the full year. And when I was getting repatriated, this JCO feebly comes to me. He says, "Sahab, अगर आपको एतराज ना हो तो हमारे साथ आप एक कप चाय पिएंगे?" So I said, "Why not? It's, after all, you worked with me for last 1 year." And over a cup of tea, he mentions. He says, "साहब, हमने आपको बहुत नज़दीक से देखा 1 साल में, और हमारे दिल में ये बात है कि अगर आप जैसे अफसर हमारे देश में होते तो पाकिस्तान की आर्मी बहुत बहुत अच्छी होती." And this thing has been there with me for the last 25 years. And I maintain it. So I believe leadership is what holds the Indian Army together. I can go on with many such examples like General Shukla laid out. The three essentials which all of us carry, and it's actually engraved in our or enshrined in our beliefs: Naam, Namak, or Nishan. As long as these three are there, we know what's supposed to be done. Rezangla was one such incident. You can count n number of incidents. When you go and look at the way Tololing was taken out in 1999 during the Op Vijay or Bhatrata, go over those features and you realize what leadership and leadership at lower levels, leadership at junior levels, section levels, platoon levels. That is which actually binds this army together. And it's not just the army, it's the army, the navy, and the air force. All of us have this, very nicely, tightly bound organizations which are keeping those three elements right in front: Naam, Namak, or Nishan. They will never let that go down. I have personally been to Razangla just about 4 years back, and we saw some of those remnants of, what happened in 1962. Way back, I'm saying 60 years ahead, that area is still not livable. And these people possibly stayed over there for, I don't know how many months, held on to that position. And frankly, I must say that, every time you go there, it gives you a kind of a inner feeling. And I was part of that reconstruction of the Razangla Memorial. And I believe that is a fitting ode to what India's military ethos is all about. Look at what happened in Longewala. Longewala is again enshrined. A company of 100 facing the onslaught of a battalion plus maybe a brigade minus with tanks. And they held out on their own, held out overnight, beat them back. Look at what happened in Khemkaran, where, the then renowned Patton tanks was actually turned into a graveyard. It's still there. Please, if you are coming to India, you must go down there. It's called Patton Nagar. And you realize what the Indian Army could do. And it was done at Havaldar and Naib Subedar levels. Havaldar Abdul Hamid is enshrined over there. They're using vintage recoilless guns, which were considered to be, totally ineffective on tanks. And these people ensured that the best tank of the world at that time was, brought down to the ground because of, adept leadership and the ethos of the country. Like General Shukla says, for the future and current and future leaders, you have obscene number of cases that you just have to, emulate and go forward. You don't have to look at examples from other nations. We have fantastic leaders. And when I say leaders, I look at leaders at all levels. Leaders at Havaldar levels, leaders at JCO levels, leaders at young officer levels. And one has to just follow the kind of methods they applied to ensure that the Indian Army flag stays flying high and the nation's flag, pride and flag stays up all the time. I look at the Indian Army or British Indian Army as a common army. And when we split, while the Indian Army maintained a totally apolitical, secular, and a professional approach. And that is why our army is lined in the manner that we are today. The exact opposite has happened across the border. And there people have got into politics, they have got into money making, all kind of wrong things which leaders should not be able to, which actually cuts that ethos out. And that is why Pakistan army is where it is. So then you have, the red and the blue right in front of you. What to be followed? It becomes very easy for a young commander to go down to his men and motivate them, because you have the ideal and you have the rogues both right in front of you. Even now, in the Galwan incident, what was put up by India was, I think, 1/6 or 1/7 of what came from the Chinese side. And I am very certain that the Chinese casualties were much larger than what they have accepted. We were all witness to the amount of bodies that came out in the Galwan Nala, which flows incidentally from China to India. So we know what happened there. That having said, we are possibly looking at new dynamics in leadership, and that is where ethos becomes very important. We have to rub in the issue of what the Indian Army stands for to ensure that this continuity stays in the future generations. And I think I can stop here and take the discussion forward as it goes on.
Thank you so much, sir. I think Longawala and Khemkaran were in 1965 war, right?
65 and 71. Longewala was
61.
71, Khemkaran was 65.
65. Thank you. Janil Shankar, your turn, sir.
Yeah, thanks a lot, at the outset for taking on this subject today. At the end of the year, it's only appropriate we discuss something on the ethos, integrity, and leadership in the military. And I must tell, the military is a reflection of India. The military doesn't come from heaven, or it doesn't come from a tree, falls. It's India. We represent India. It comes from all walks of life in India, common people. So to a large extent, the integrity, ethos, and leadership of the Indian Army is representative of what India is. And that is something which we need to understand and feel proud of. That's the first thing. And when you look at it, you just have to see what's happening in the leadership of our adversaries, the PLA and the Pakistan Army. You see, an army fights best when it doesn't have money, right? You keep money away from an army, the army is absolutely fit. थोड़ा भूखा नंगा होना चाहिए. You have to have that fight in the belly. And Pakistan Army and the PLA have too much money. Today, I was looking at something where another 2 Air Force chaps in the Chinese Army have been sacked. It appears that every guy who becomes a general in the PLA is getting sacked. And they'll lose. I have no doubt they can't fight. Same with Pakistan Army. They've stashed all their money abroad. So they're into business of, making money. The Pakistan Army, through the Fauji Foundation, has bought off PIA, Pakistan International Airlines, right? So that is the thing. When someone says corruption in the army, a corrupt army can't win. It's only an honest army which, sheds blood can win. And that's what Indian Army has been doing. Now I'll take it up from 1962. Everyone says India got defeated in 1962. But Major Shaitan Singh and the story which General Raj Shukla said talks otherwise. You go to Balong, you see Indian Army fought very well. They fought to the extent they even launched a counterattack if you go to the Battle of Balong. It's just that they were not organized beyond a point to, they didn't have the wherewithal, but they fought with what they had. And here also, the only place where we collapsed, where the leadership collapsed, And that was a combination of the civil and military leadership which collapsed, was in the, today what you call the Tawang sector, at that time the Nefa sector. And the difference between collapse and, standing was leadership. If that day, those set of leaders in Fordiv had stood by their men, history of India would have been different. I'm making this point because the importance of leadership. Our men are the best in the world. I mean, I don't have to tell. We get inspired by our men, right? It is the men for which our heart beats. Right. The second thing is, Raj Shukla spoke of Sagat Bhagatan, who was the third chap?
Manekshaw.
Sam Sagat. Yeah, Sam Sagat and Bhagat. Let me talk about Sagat Singh a little. Many of us don't know that just 62 we had this debacle in Nefa. 3 years later, 65, and we beat Pakistan. The army bounced back. Great leadership of that time. But most importantly, in 67 at Natula, General Sagat Singh was the Div commander in Gangtok, 17 Div. Right? And another Div was in a place called Jalapla, which is next to Natula. Orders were given for withdrawal. The other GOC withdrew a bit, and we don't have Jalapla in our hands today. Right? The Jalapla is with the Chinese. General Sagat Singh refused to take those orders. And he fought. He taught Chinese a lesson. On that day, more than 200 people died in the PLA. Died. Artillery plastered them. Our artillery. And they couldn't do much about it. When our leadership has stood, India has won. There's no doubt about it. And you take this back to Sam Manekshaw. Many people say, look, it's a matter of ethos, integrity, command, all that. Sam Manekshaw was told by Indira Gandhi to, attack or go carry out military operations against East Pakistan in the summer of 1971. He said, no, I'll not do that. He said, I'll not do that because this is rainy season. If I go in, I will have a problem, we will lose. We are not equipped for carrying out operations in rainy season across. After all, there are 52 rivers going into Bangladesh. They'll be all in spate. We don't have the equipment to do river crossing at that scale. The passes are open up north. The Chinese can interfere. After all, the difference between Bangladesh, today you're talking about Chicken Neck. How far is the Chicken Neck and the Chumbi Valley from there? He said, give me time, let me train my army, and I'll go in December when the water levels are low and the passes are closed, and I get time to train, and I get time to shift my... He did that. He stood up for his men. He stood up for his army. He stood up for the nation. And he told the Prime Minister of that time, look, this is it. And look at that Prime Minister. Full marks to her. She saw sense in what this man said. And he said, yes, let's do that. And the rest is history. It's a different thing. You're looking at these Bangladeshi fools who have forgotten all that. Okay. I mean, it's a very funny country which has forgotten a genocide by their own brethren. More than 10 lakhs people were driven away. And all that they have forgotten. It happened to their mothers and fathers and grandfathers. And today they're behaving in the way they are behaving. But that's a different story. Okay. Right? I have said the difference between leaders of an army makes that army. And what makes that army makes the country. And that is why you will see the Indian army has never failed India. right? And I want to make a point here, which many people don't understand. You know, people say that the Indian Army and the Indian Armed Forces didn't contribute to the independence of India. Well, that's the view, because the Indian Army never, got onto the streets with flags or all those naras of independence. Okay, but why did the Britishers leave India? Something which people have to understand. There was a mutiny in Gurdaspur in the Air Force station. Very small mutiny. Okay, and it was quelled. After that, the Britishers lost confidence. They said, if the Indian Army goes this way, we can't control the situation. It'll be worse than the mutinies. Why? They had trained our officers. And our officers knew what to do. And then that was the time when they started negotiating for, the Quit India movement, and all that was given the political way out, so that the Britishers don't look scared about leaving India. And there's something which people don't know. And yet, please understand, the Indian officers who were serving with the British Indian Army at that time maintained their poise. They still owed their allegiance to the flag, Naam Nimakar Nishan. But ultimately, they did what they had to do for the country by keeping quiet, but conveying a menace to the Britishers that your time has come, please go. Unspoken. That is leadership. A lot of people don't understand this whole story. Okay. And then we had, many people don't know. Now, I'll talk of a man called Field Marshal Karyappa. Right? He was the first Indian officer to have done staff college. Till then, staff college was at Quetta. Only the British officers could do it. He was the first officer. He was the first officer who was given command of a battalion. Before that, no one was given command of a battalion. Command was sacrosanct. Just like no Indian officer was commissioned into the artillery. We all grew up in artillery. Yeah, we are all gunners. Okay. Indian officers were not allowed to handle guns. Indian officers could go. The last arm which got Indian officers was artillery. Okay. The first officer like Karyappa. And later, when he went up, he saw things, in Burma he fought. He didn't like the way INA prisoners were being treated. After all, the INA were fighting on the Japanese side. They were prisoners. Here was one man who stood up to the Britishers and said, the INA prisoners of war should be treated better. He told the Britishers that, look, tomorrow these are the guys who are going to be ruling India. They can't be ill-treated. They are the ones who are going to be my political heads. Because INA was largely a political army. And he got better treatment for them. This is the thing. And then much far later, he also, when he was in a higher appointment, till then there was discrimination between the British officers and the Indian officers. He took up arms against the British. He said, sorry, this can't happen. There's no discrimination. He was the one. He's from the Rajput regiment. If you go to the Rajput regiment, you'll find Rajput regiment is one regiment which has Bengalis. Where are Rajputs? Where are Bengalis? Where are Rajputs? Where are Muslims? Pure Muslims are there in Rajputs. He said, look, if no other regiment can have these people, I'll have them. That's leadership. That's the ethos. And that's the ethos which Indian Army today lives with. I've just picked up from what General Harimohan and General Raj Shukla have said. One of the things everyone has to understand is that the Indian Army or integrity or ethos and everything is something far more. The last example I'll give you is that all of you who are watching this are watching three general officers discussing mundane things. Show me an equivalent anywhere in the world. Show me three Pakistani generals talking like this. Show me three, PLA generals talking or three American generals talking. Like simple people with our men, our citizens. That is the ethos of the Indian Army, right? I just thought I'll make this point. Back to you, Sri Ayerji.
Thank you so much, sir. When was the Gurdaspur rebellion?
This was just before around 42, 43.
I see.
I
So
don't
there was
remember
also
the
the
date.
naval rebellion, right? There was also a naval
Before
mutiny.
that. The naval mutiny was before that. The naval mutiny. Yeah, please go ahead, Raj.
So it was that was in Mumbai and Karachi, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Raj has got a point of view.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
One of the biggest lies, sir, is this ki mili hame azadi bina khadak bina dhal. The was entirely due to
World War II.
You can go back to the 1857 mutiny or the Air Force rebels, and most importantly was Sri Ayerji saying the naval mutinies. I can't recall whom, but I think after the naval mutiny there was some conversation between the Governor General and Churchill, and he told him that now that the Indian military has started, showing signs of disaffection, it is best to leave. People have recounted it in historical terms why that was the clincher. So mili hame, I mean, that they would definitely be contributory factors, non-violence, ahimsa. I mean, Mahatma Gandhi also was a great man. I don't want to discredit it. But to say ki mili hame azadi bina khadak bina dhal is a pack of absolute nonsense. It was largely due to the disaffections demonstrated by the Indian military. But you know what General Shankar and Hari have said? They've given me just a few more threads to continue the discussion. One is, I just wonder, Naib Subedar Hari Ram's leadership was as elevating as Sam Manekshaw or Sagat. Only they were operating in different frames or levels. Hari Ram was at the sub-tactical level, Sagat was at the operational level, and perhaps Manekshaw was at the strategic military level. But those leadership strains came from a common ethos. And so just let me elaborate on a few things. Sagat, Indian military history has always prioritized valor over victory. So Rani Lakshmi Bai, Prithviraj Chauhan, Porus, they were all valorous, but they all lost their battles. The only general known to me in recent times who won every battle he fought was Sagat Singh. And look at this. This is a these are great virtues of the Indian military. Sam mentored Sagat. They had a mentor-mentee relationship. And Sam came for an entirely different stock. He was public school educated, anglicized. Sagat's first school was a Marwadi medium school. Then he goes to Hindi medium, finally English medium. He does staff college at two places. He was not like me or General Shankar, the ND elite. He had to prove himself. So he does staff college twice. And by the time he becomes the icing on the cake, Nathula, General Shankar Nathula, he refused to take Bevoor's calls. Bevoor, who became chief, GOC 33 Corps. He opened artillery without asking him. Opened artillery. And General Shankar is absolutely right. The reason Nathula is with us and Janapla is gone because one man, Sagat. I wish we had more Sagats in 62. 62, unfortunately, we had the Call boys. Call, Thapar, Karan Thapar's father, all the wrong kind of leaders. And that's why 62 happened. In fact, General Bhagat says that in 65, the Indian officership was wanting to undo the wrongs of 62. So in 65, more Indian officers died than men. They were wanting to undo the guilt of 62. And by 71, it peaks. Now, how does it peak? Sam Manekshaw, once this Nathula happens, there is a whole outcry against Sagat. And Sam, with his typical wit, is in Delhi. He's then officiating as the army chief. Those days, the senior most army commander used to officiate and not the vice chief. And he's asked by the press about Nathula. And he says, oh, so he's conducting Hamlet without Macbeth. I'll take care of him when I get back. But what he does is that he removes him from there and positions him in for the Mizo insurgency. वहां भी वो कमाल करता है. Sagat was like that. Goa, he's the first man to, reach Panjim. Nathula, what he does, Mizo insurgency. And then before 71, he positions him in 4 Corps. Now, there is a deeper story to this. I make this argument that not only were Sam and Sagat the architect of India's greatest victory in modern history, 1971, where we carved out a new geopolitical reality, Bangladesh. But they were also the architects of our strategic rejuvenation against China. You will say how? As General Shankar so vividly recounted, it begins with Nathula. Sagat first makes that phrase. He says the Chinese are not 5 feet, not 10 feet tall. They are 5 feet tall. And he proves it. And then see what happens. 71 is really the icing on the cake. Before that, one more incident. Sam Manekshaw, because he's not in the call boy camp, Krishna Menon tries to fix him. And how does he fix him? Krishna Menon is on this fixing spree. He goes to 26th Division, Jammu, where Sam Manekshaw is the GOC. And he mischievously asks him, in fact, deliberately asks him, Sam, what do you think of Thimaya? Thimaya is then the army chief. And Krishna Menon couldn't stand him one bit. So Sam, with his typical humor, says, sir, in the army, we are under orders not to think of our seniors. So Krishna Menon says, Sam, you're a smart cookie. Don't tell me that. What do you think of him? I want to know. Now Sam sheds his humor and shows his character. And says, sir, I not only have an opinion of General Thimaya, but I also have an opinion of you. Shall I tell you what I think of you? This is a true story. GOC will have the guts to say that to his Raksha Mantri. And when you show courage, it's not without a price. That's what the young generation needs to know. Price is paid. So Sam is shunted into oblivion. He goes to Staff College where an inquiry is run against him. An entirely deceitful inquiry full of falsehoods. My father, who was in the Air Force, happened to be in Staff College then. And here's an Air Force man paying tribute. He says for 1.5 years, we didn't know that Sam was under a cloud. The way he used to function, he didn't miss, his whole gait was confident. This shows, courage under adversity. Now what happens? 62 happens, and in Sam's eloquent wit, he says I would have gone home as a Major General, but the Chinese came to my rescue. Thank God they attacked. They were looking for victory. They were looking for generals to command corps. Nobody was willing to command, and he sent to 4 Corps. Now is the interesting story. He goes there and he gives a one-line address to all officers. He says, gentlemen, I've arrived. Henceforth, there'll be no withdrawals. Reoccupy your posts. Now, this is the time when the Indian army has run helter-skelter. Pandit Nehru has said goodbye to Assam. Just pick the moment. And he tells people to order to reoccupy the posts. And people think this is typical Sam charisma, his flamboyance. He will not stand by it. He stands by it. There are duels, there are clashes, injuries start happening. The news travels to Delhi. And in come rushing Prime Minister Nehru, General Chaudhary, who's the army chief, and Indira Gandhi, who's nobody, but Nehru's daughter. And there in the confabulations, Nehru persuades General Chaudhary to tell Manekshaw, yaar, stop aggravating things. Abhi itne log hum haare hain, so many people have died. Piche aa jao, baad mein dekhenge. But Sam is adamant. He says, this is the way I command a corps. You don't like me, send me back to Wellington. And in this conversation, which is also picked up in this latest movie on Sam Manekshaw,
Sam Bahadur.
Sam Bahadur. Indira Gandhi whispers into Nehru's ears. She says, Dad, when all these generals are retreating, one man is willing to stand up. Let him stand up. And if you see the exchange of glances between Indira and Sam Manekshaw, when she's leaving that room, people infer that that is the time they've developed this respect for each other. Sam Manekshaw and Indira Gandhi. And that turns out to our great advantage in 71. Indira Gandhi makes him the chief despite the fact that he's a strong man, because she knew that we needed a strong man for 71. If 71 was not in the offing, Sam may not have been chief. And now see what happens. This Jugalbandi. He positions Sagat for 4 corps. And Sagat, when he's briefing General Jaggi Arora, the army commander, Eastern Command, by this time, Sagat is known all over the army. So the orders to Sagat, and these are in his biography by a lovely book by General Randhir Singh called A Talent for War. Sagat was born only for war, not for peace. So there, the orders to Sagat are, Jaggi Arora, bakiyon ko bolta hai, you will capture this, you will capture this. He tells Sagat, you will not cross the Meghna, because he knows Sagat will be ahead. He says, have you heard
And
me?
Sagat crossed the Meghna. And
Sagat
Sagat
says,
crossed the Meghna.
That's the point. That's the point. And a week or so later, now Sagat, why does he cross the Meghna? You speak to General Sehota and all, they'll tell you he practiced heliborne operations when they were not in our formal manuals. Heliborne operations were not being taught in staff college. He was an infantry man who was made for maneuver. And what does he do? When he reaches Meghna, Jaggi Arora rings him up again and says, Sagat, remember, you are not to cross the Meghna. Now Sagat turns. He says, sir, you are speaking to a corps commander and not a sergeant. I see opportunity across and Dhaka beyond. I'm crossing tomorrow morning at 5. And this is not just a story, because later on, the Defense Secretary, Mr. Lal, says that on the 10th of December, there was a meeting taking place in South Block, chaired by Swaran Singh, the External Affairs Minister. Mr. Jagjeevan Ram was out somewhere. And when they got the news that Meghna had been crossed, the PS to the Prime Minister went running to Indira Gandhi. And they say Indira Gandhi comes out of a room in sheer joy, running with her hair and her sari flying. Meghna had been crossed, Dhaka was taken, and geopolitics was altered. And if you still don't believe me, the London Times of that era describes the dash to Dhaka as a more brilliant operation than Blitzkrieg. What a compliment, Blitzkrieg. And Sagat is equated with Patton, the master of pursuit. And for the first time, historians say that the mentee outdid the mentor. Sagat outdid Sam Manekshaw. Now, this is our legacy, which Shankar laid the edifice, Nathola, Dhaka. And this is not disobedience of orders. This is, going by your conviction. If Sagat had not got Dhaka, he would have been court-martialed. He had defied the army commander's orders. Now, these are risks. These are the opportunities. And I think these are General Randhir's words. He says the Indian army, its top leadership, they were not dar sheep, but they were free-thinking goats. From Hari Ram to Sam to Sagat to Bhagat, we are free-thinking goats. And we should never make the mistake of getting straight-jacketed in petty rules and regulations. But the Indian Army ethos has to be higher than these rules and regulations. And that is something, if we can sustain, that is, I think, our real leadership challenge. So Sam and Sagat, they really stand out. And one last point about Sam, look at his magnanimity. That inquiry that I spoke about, one brigadier deposes against Sam in that inquiry. False. And when Sam becomes chief, the file of this brigadier comes to him. Now only Sam can do this. He writes on that file that this brigadier deposed against me. It would be conflict of interest or whatever. He marks the file to the defense secretary, and that man is promoted. Look at the magnanimity of this man. There is another incident that Krishna Menon, who had, virtually, it got after him. at some function where Sam is now the chief and Krishna Menon is nobody. I think it was an investiture ceremony. Krishna Menon comes out. Sam walks up to him and says, "Good evening, sir. How are you?" We are all taught that. And his wife is standing next to him, Billu. Ladies are ladies. He politely asks Billu, "Billu, do you recall Krishna Menon, the honorable defense minister?" But ladies are ladies. Billu says, "I don't, and I don't wish to." But Sam, now these are these are true stories. These were true characters in the Indian Army. So my conclusion really is that if you have to look for ethos, if you have to look for the highest gold standards of leadership, why look elsewhere? You got them in your
हमारे
army.
पास है. Yeah.
हमारे पास है.
Yeah.
So many of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, I was just what Shreyaji was asking. The naval mutiny was in 1946, February 1946. And the Gurdaspur mutiny was in 47. Interestingly, the Gurdaspur mutiny happened when the Radcliffe line, that award was being made. The Radcliffe Commission was in India at that time. And this mutiny is not very well known. If you see, it's not even classified as a mutiny. But it was a mutiny. And it happened only in Gurdaspur. And Gurdaspur was falling in that zone. Okay? That shook the Britishers up completely. Completely. Quit India and all later. Okay? They said, look, if this can happen in an Air Force station here, small, and if we could control it, if we don't quit India, we'll be hacked. Of course, they had the mutiny as the, backdrop of all this. After all, what happened in the mutiny? If you read what happened in the 1857 mutiny, actually the Britishers almost left. Almost left. Who came to their help was some of their Mussalman battalions of, the NWFP, Northwestern Frontier Province. Some of the battalions which were there around Kanpur helped them. Otherwise, they were gone. And in this case, they were quite sure both the Muslims and the Indians or the non-Muslims. When I say Muslims, the, today what do you call the Pakistan Army? Officers of the Pakistan Army. And after all, we were at that time one Indian Army. Everyone was against the Britishers. And if the Indian Army officers go against, their officers will follow suit blindly. And end of story. So this is not well recorded, but this is a fact. Right? And we have someone who don't recognize what our officers done, what our... Just you have to go back. I'll come back to little later. What happened in Sundaramchu? Wangdung incident. Everyone talks of Wangdung incident, Arunachal, wo. You look at Arunachal, and what happened in 87 was there's this small place called Sundaramchu, Wangdung. Wangdung is just about 100 meters this side of the LAC. The Chinese came and occupied that place. Okay? They wouldn't go back. It became a problem. The army there was deployed. And the army, even after their deployment, even the PLA deployed. But the PLA didn't deploy fully. Right? And they wouldn't move. So what did the leadership of the day do? General Sundarji. He ordered another division to be pushed in there. And, it's not only Bumla. Sundaramchu is between Bumla and Kenzamane. That was a time when he put 2 divisions up and the entire LAC, all the heights, he took over. The Indian Army took over. Okay? And we're still holding them. The complete heights in the Bumla sector and right up to Tulungla, which is further to the right, or rather further to the east, we took over. And as a result, today, The Chinese post at Guangdong is still there. It's a small post. It looks into the valley. It's got no significance. Because the Chinese did what we did, in 1987, we just took over the rest of all the heights in that area. Now, fast forward to December 22. What happens in December 22? The Chinese come. There is disengagement which takes place at Gogra and Hot Spring. By then, the Kailash range operations, which Hari was part of, is done. And then, Gogra and Hot Springs, February 20, I think, somewhere in 22, the Gogra and Hot Springs disengagement. Yeah, October 22, Gogra and Hot Springs. Yeah, October. Yeah, I remember.
21, October 21.
22.
21, sir.
That happens. So next year, Xi Jinping tries to get hold of Arunachal at Yangtze. He tries it and he gets beaten. Why? Because someone in 87 took the decision that we should occupy the heights. That is the ethos. That is the strength and vision. That is the leadership. And believe you me, I've been to these places. I went to these places. I'm now going back 30 years, 91, 92. You could only go by foot. To go to that place called Tulungla, it takes you 7 days going and 7 days coming, and you go with whatever you have on your back, and that's it. And in those times, with that kind of a thing, the Indian Army went and occupied the heights, and it has not given it up so far. And Arunachal will never go to China. I mean, to give you the political part of this Arunachal story, it was in 2003 that we recognized Tibet as part of China. Till then, till then we didn't. It was at MOU between Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Jiang Zemin that we recognized Tibet as part of China. Till then, there was no talk of South Tibet. There was no talk of Arunachal. Zero. Nothing. They were chup. Because we had occupied that entire heights and Bumla sector completely, Kameng sector. That was their only claim. We had taken, and other places we had stabilized. More than stabilized. After that, the Chinese perfidiously start using this word South Tibet and start talking. Till then, there is no mention of South Tibet anywhere in the history of Tibet, history of India, or history of China. Today, that Arunachal has become a core issue. It's a core interest of China, Zangan, South Tibet. They keep talking that they're going to take it. If only we gave up on Yangtze in December 22, we would have lost that place. And that we didn't lose because what we did in 87. I'm stitching up history. And all this comes from leadership, ethos, integrity, and command. It is just not Sagat saying, lest you get away. We were not a one-man show. I mean, General Sagat Singh was great. I've read his thing. In fact, can you imagine? They were just, incidentally, that Meghna crossing was done with just about half a dozen helicopters. And each of them flew about 20, 21 sorties through the night when they were not fit for night flying.
Chandan Singh.
Okay, so we have done some crazy things in this army. And that is why India is where it is. Yeah. Sorry, I've taken a long time. Back to you, and over to you, Hari.
Thank you, sir. General Iyer, we kind of change the sequence, but I'll want to come back to you. To the extent you can reveal, talk to us about the Kailash experience in October 2021, sir.
Kailash. All I can say is, we were under pressure in the north of Pengongsu. There was a couple of places where anything beyond where Chinese had already reached would have created a huge amount of crisis. Now, when you look at Rezangla, Rechinla, it overlooks what is called the Moldo garrison of China. And Chinese are very, very, sentimental about this garrison. and that controls the entire road towards Rudok in the south. And frankly, the Chinese never thought that, we will take an offensive action. And especially the way we took that offensive action. That offense, normally when a operation of that nature happens, you prepare for weeks. When I say weeks, you have got to induct a large number of forces, you have to deploy, you have to bring ammunition on ground, and all this was done. And Chinese, frankly, never expected that we had the capabilities, because we had to induct the troops from hinterland. And I recollect each and every day, because I used to induct a battalion every day. I was the operating logistics MG at that time, Major General Operation Logistics. And we used to induct a battalion of Indian Army from hinterland to Ladakh every day. That was the.
Yeah, you can put up a map if so that people understand what is talking. This
I wish I had that map of Rachinla.
This is the map, sir. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's for the south, yeah. When you look at Kailash range, actually you can zoom this map, sir. I think that will be better.
You can't. Unfortunately, I can't zoom.
If you look at this map, I think I can move my arrow here. Yeah,
Yeah,
when
you
look
can't.
at
I'll
Pangong
move. You keep talking. I'll move. I know the place.
So you see, Pangong So Lake is where north of where Kailash is written over there. Yeah. So the area north of Pangong So Lake, especially the areas of the Depsang definitely, and then further south towards the
Galwan and
Galwan,
Hot Springs.
Hot Springs, Gogra, and the dunes, the Pimple areas, the 5 Pimple areas, DB and Dhan Bahadur Thapa post. That was the area which the Chinese had actually concentrated. And they were possibly, this is what I would like to take, sir. Yeah. So when you look at the south, this area, they were never expecting any kind of movement from us, because this covers a very, very important gap which the Chinese always want to use. And Rechenla and Rezangla covers that gap. So you have Gurung Hill onto the left, and then you have Rezangla, and then Rechenla. So this operation we went with Amar leading the operation, Amar and Mek leading the operation. Never expected by the Chinese. They never thought that the tanks will roll over a feature like the Rezangla. And these operations were done over one night. Over 14 battalions, 4 armored regiments, and 3 Mek battalions. I can't specify the number of artillery units which were readjusted. Went to the clockwork, and they were caught napping, because before the morning, and the orders were very clear, we wouldn't cross what we call as the line of actual control, which runs generally along the front edge of the Rezangla-Rechinla line. In fact, one of our battalions had gone much more enthusiastic. They went down almost about 1 kilometer down, and then they had to be pulled back, because the orders were very clear that we'll stay on the line of actual control that we demarcated for ourselves. And we stood there, and the Chinese had to possibly bring up everything they had. And for about a year, we were, eyeball to eyeball over there. In fact, the tanks which were there, the Indian tank and the Chinese tank, we had to turn the gun towards the other side, because they would have otherwise clashed at each other. That was the distance between the 2 tanks. And we stayed there in that period, and the temperatures, I must tell you, at that time was, I used to get this report every day from Rechenla and Rezangla, minus 40 degrees, minus 45 degrees. We used to send water, and I can share this, that we didn't know how to keep these people, maintain these people, because at that temperature, nothing survives. So we tried many methods to try and send water. I even went down, picked up some HTP, what we call plastic jerry cans, and sent water. They all got expanded and blown up. So we had to work out multiple methods of using canvas-based pipelines to send water up. Large amount of even fuel doesn't work over there. They had no tentage, no cover, but our troops stood there. And we stood there for about 7 months. We stood through a full winter and forced the Chinese to come on the negotiating table. So if General Shankar says October 21 happened because what happened in August 21? when we went there and we showed that if you don't come to the negotiating table, then possibly Moldo garrison is our next option. And let me tell you, we had just had to roll down and we could have gone into the Moldo garrison. And the kind of force we had put over there, the Chinese were totally astounded because they didn't have the kind of counter force to, match with us. Galwan, I think I said that last time when we were on the same discussion, that we put a man-to-man at Galwan and Depsang and those areas to the north. It was almost equal number of force that we put. But what we had been able to put at Dzangla and Rechenla and Gurung Hill was far more than what Chinese could muster on their own sides. So that is something which is out of, it's there because the kind of force we were able to generate, the initiative which we managed to push across, and we showed the intent that the Indian Army is not a push along. And I must mention, sir, I was the OP officer at Ring Contour in Kinzemane in 1988.
Yeah.
And I was also an OP officer, a battery commander in Yanze. In fact, it was a pride moment to say that Yanze was a place which we had taken across the line of actual control. Must know that Yanze is the place where we redefined the line of actual control in 1987. And since then, we have been always giving them a bloody nose whenever they have tried to do something in Yanze. I just want to add a couple of issues. The leadership India is blessed, I must say that, because the British, like Shankar mentioned, they never allowed Indian officers in the British Indian regiments. So what it did was that the NCO level leadership, as far as India is concerned, the ethos actually developed there. They became very strong, and that is possibly a point. Today, you go to any outfit, and you look at the way our NCOs, the Havaldars and the JCOs they control, they are able to put the things together in a manner that higher end leadership is able to execute it. I must share another very interesting incident. I was DS in Staff College, and we were doing a war game, or rather a sand model exercise on counter-insurgency and counter-terrorism operations in J&K. And there was this Canadian student of mine was there who had 2 tours in Afghanistan. So when those small level, company level operations were being discussed in those sand model discussions, he gets up and he comes and asks me, he says, "Sir, please tell me, how do you manage to do this, house search drill? How do you manage to put a troop together, knowing very well that the guy is standing with a AK-47 across the door?" So I told him the first guy to kick the door is an officer. There's the officer who is the guy who leads. And that is something which is, and junior level officers, whether it was Vikram Batra, whether it was Manoj Pandey, they have left those kind of, though we keep talking about Sagats and Manekshaws, we should also remember these youngsters just out of academy, they were commissioned maybe 6 months before, and they have achieved something which we need to look at. And that is why, when you go to Devlali, I've created a little monument over there. Because that's something which we should know, that our junior leadership is excellent. And that junior leadership actually emulates and goes beyond. And it's a kind of a cycle which keeps going on. So you have the bar there, which everybody looks at. And then you have the people following down below, right from the Havaldar to a JCO, to a subaltern, to a captain, to a subunit commander, to a CO. We have a fantastic set of commanding officers in the Indian Army, and that is where the ethos comes in. We have these units called the Rashtriya Rifles. They are what we call as Khichdi units. People come from various battalions, and then they form a unit. And they are doing counterinsurgency operations for the last 3 decades, night in, night out. And you look at the way they organize themselves, the way they create an ethos, despite coming from different backgrounds, despite coming from different kind of ideologies, they come together, create a team, and the team works like a clockwork. I have been in Northern Command 4 years. I have not seen a single operation done by the Rashtriya Rifles which did not have everything going as it's supposed to go. And that is where the Indian Army's strength comes in. Our junior leadership is fantastic. And that is something we should be very proud of. And possibly allows us, senior officers, to take some degree of daring decisions. If you go and look at what Tololing was, and you just stand on Tololing at the place where the Tololing lower edge was starting, and just put a light machine gun there, and you look at the only track which actually goes up to Tololing, and think that this people, and it is not at a small, short altitude, we are talking about 11,000 feet, 12,000 feet. And that altitude, a single track, cold period, it is one machine gun can take out 10 people at one time, and still we went. And still we were not only able to take them out, we continued. We didn't stop at Tololing, we went further beyond, went to Batra Top, went to Tiger Hill. That these are operations which actually indicates what is the ethos of the Indian Army. And it gives the commander the kind of confidence that tomorrow, if you are put into that kind of a test, the Indian Army is never going to let you down. And that is what I have learned in my 4 decades in the Indian Army. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. A lot of stuff makes my arms tingle with the pride. My grandfather was in the Navy, and he was witness to the naval rebellion that took place. I'm still trying to find out what really happened, why he was jailed, but that's a story for a different day. Thank you so much, sir.